All right, we are live. Bekah Broe in the house. Bekah, how are you doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Now, this is our first official YouTube live stream. So it's an honor to have you here. You're the senior. Right, we are live. Bekah Broe in the house. Bekah, sorry. Um,
So excited you're saying it twice.
I know. No, we're doing good now. So anyways, senior product manager at New Balance. Give us a little idea on what your role is and what you do kind of on a day-to-day basis.
I basically have the best job in the world. So for any running shoe nerd, just imagine that you get to work with extremely talented designers and developers every day and build your own dream running shoes. So for me, it's pretty exciting because I get to help brief kind of future product, work directly with some of our Team New Balance athletes, and really build stuff that's just super fun and awesome to run in.
Awesome. Now, I know we're gonna dive in deep on the RC Elite. We talked on the message board. We talked with a lot of people. They all want to hear about it, but we'll wait a little bit. Let some more fans join the stream. But I guess next on up, I want to know how long have you been at New Balance, and I guess what's your day-to-day life looking like right now?
What does that look like for anyone right now? It's such a crazy world, but luckily New Balance has made it very easy for all of us in a wild time. I have been with the company for 8 years. So I actually started in the field as a tech rep or a trackster in Michigan 8 years ago, and spent 2 years working with running specialty stores across Michigan, educating consumers and staff on product. And then about 6 years ago, I got a call to move on to Boston and join the product team. So it's been really awesome. Life in Boston, is crazier than ever right now. But I think for anyone that lives in this running world at this time, that more people are joining the sport, and luckily working from home cuts out some commuting time. So it does also allow me to get out for some extra miles too. So life is good, and New Balance is great.
Awesome. Now, you have kind of been the person who's been heading the RC Elite. Can you talk about what this shoe is all about? What is this shoe? How is it going to compare to, the TC that we saw debut not too long ago?
Yeah, I know we'll get into some more specific comparisons with the TC in a little bit, but a couple years ago, the team at New Balance set out to build a shoe called the FuelCell 5280. So hopefully a lot of people on this live stream are really familiar with it, but basically our mission was to say, hey, we have these incredible athletes racing the mile on the road, and we want to build them this awesome, finely tuned underfoot machine that can help them compete to their best at that distance. So it was about a 3-year process with that shoe for the innovation team and the inline team to build this super compelling product. From there, we realized, hey, there's something really cool. This shoe feels awesome. It's working great for these athletes at this distance. But we also know that not everyone can run a road mile, right? And a majority of people that are racing in the US are racing longer distances at slightly slower paces than what, Jenny's running for the Fifth Ave mile. So we really wanted to take some of that technology, some of that learning, and figure out how we could evolve that up to the marathon distance. So we kind of joke and we say the RC Elite is like the 5280 times 26.2. It's that mile experience really amplified up to the marathon distance. So it involved a little over 2 years of work with our innovation teams, with sports marketing, with our sports research lab to really test and validate this underfoot setup that now we're super excited to be launching really, really soon.
Awesome. Now, like I said, we've got our new message board. A lot of people reached out with questions, so we're going to dive right on into them. The first question, is the RC Elite mostly for racing, or would it perform as well as a performance trainer?
Yeah, so it was certainly built first and foremost with racing in mind. But that doesn't mean that there's not a reason why you couldn't use it for training. So when we talked about durability with the shoe, we kept in mind that someone training for a full marathon cycle should be able to use this without having any cause for concern that if they're wearing the shoe for their last couple long runs, some harder tempos throughout training, we wanted to make sure that the RC Elite still felt 100% come race day. So for us, it's a combination. Like, it's definitely meant to deliver that crazy underfoot experience for marathon racing in particular, but it definitely has some longevity when it comes to training as well.
Awesome. Now, next on up, specs. That's always kind of the big question with runners. So what are we looking at for heel toe drop, and what's the stack height?
Yes. So the heel toe drop is a 10 mil offset here. So it's actually very similar to the 1400. We know that was kind of a cult classic shoe. It was one of the first racing flats, that I wore when I started working at New Balance. And I know there's still such a fan base for that model out there. So we know that there's something great about that 10 mil drop, especially when you're adding a pretty dynamic carbon fiber plate into a shoe. That slightly higher offset allows you a ton of room to play with the shape of the plate in that underfoot setup. So for us, kind of merging that awesome, really fun, racy fit of the 1400, but then also leveraging that general build to really maximize on the plate setup was just a great kind of 1-2 punch. When we
Awesome.
talk about, when we talk about the general stack heights in the shoe, I know that's also kind of a crazy topic right now for everyone too, with new regulations in the sport and just a lot going on. The overall stack heights of the shoe are well within the legal limits. So your midsole heights are about 32-22, which is higher than a traditional racing shoe. It's about 10 mil higher than a 1400, but still well legal based on some new regulations.
Right. Those regulations kind of throw a whole new, barrier, and you got to really consider those things. But it looks like this is going to be still pretty highly cushioned, still really good shoe for the marathon. Talking about those regulations, I want to go to our chat. Viper DFS says, do some pro runners have access to a custom version of this shoe with different plate stiffnesses, or is what the people are getting with the RC Elite what the pros are going to be using?
What the people are getting is what the pros are using here. So throughout the process of building this shoe, we actually tested a ton of different plate stiffnesses. So it's a great question. But we really did want to make sure that we were building the stiffness of the plate through testing not only with our sports research lab to make sure that it was performing the best, but also to make sure that it had the best perception from our athletes. So over the last 2 years, before any of this kind of regulation craziness started happening, we had already narrowed down to one specific plate material and setup that both tested great in our sports research lab and was also validated through great perception testing with our athletes. So we're pretty happy and pretty excited that we feel like the solution we're offering to everyone is the same solution that's truly working the best for Team New Balance athletes.
Now, on that same topic, from the TC 5280 and RC Elite, all three have the plates. How are those plates going to differentiate between models?
Yeah, 5280 is going to be on a little bit of an island. It's obviously tuned specifically for a much shorter, much more aggressive race distance. Between the TC and the RC Elite is where it gets really interesting. So through all of that plate testing that we did leading up to this launch, we did realize that we were able to settle on one general plate shape and one plate stiffness and material that just seemed to work the best across both of those models. So the plate is actually the same for the TC and the RC Elite. And really, we did that just knowing the feedback from the lab was the best, the testing with our athletes was the best, and it was also one of the more durable plate materials. So we obviously didn't want something that someone could pick up in their hands and it felt really fragile, or could kind of snap with that in-hand test. So we feel really, really good that plate comes to life in a really different way based on the underfoot setup between those two different models, but that it's still the best choice independently for each one of those shoes.
Perfect. Now, RC Elite, TC, we've been hearing about both of them. Are they built on the same last, and how's the fit going to differentiate between the two?
Your fit is going to be a little bit different in the upper, mainly because on the RC Elite, we said, hey, listen, this is for race day. We want to take off any of the junk that you don't need. And so weight is critical. So you will notice the upper on RC Elite is just much more streamlined. You're not really going to have an abundance of overlays. So we've removed a lot of the kind of micro suede detailing that you saw in the TC. And we rely instead on some 3D printing that is super lightweight, still gives you that little visual pop, but then also allows for maybe a little bit more of a breathable feel in the upper of the RC Elite, and then just being really sensitive to that kind of toe box fit for the end of the marathon. In terms of the general build underfoot, the biggest difference and the biggest thing that we're excited to celebrate in the RC Elite is this new compound underfoot and the new outsole setup. So those are two of the biggest things that we tweaked after getting a lot of feedback on the TC to make sure the RC Elite was super lightweight and super race ready and had just a really dynamic and different feel.
Awesome. Now you brought up the outsole. I've got a question. The sole and grip design drawn from the 5280 is an interesting choice. What was the idea for going down this route as opposed to the TC with a full piece of rubber? Does this affect flexibility, responsiveness? What was the inspiration behind that process? Because obviously there's a weight component, but I do know that process in general is very expensive to do. So can you talk about what the whole deal is with the RC Elite's outsole design?
Yeah, again, I will go back to some of the learnings from the 5280, right? And when we look at this system of providing speed for athletes, we know that traction plays a huge role in that. So it's your midsole material, your plate design, the weight and traction are some of the key elements. We realize that when you go up to the marathon distance, traction and weight are still critical for anyone racing a marathon distance. So that Dynaride outsole material we use on the 5280 is fantastic for helping kind of check off both of those criteria, because not only is it super lightweight and provides great traction, but that base for Dynaride actually doesn't require us to have that typical thin layer of rubber to bond the lugs to. So you get that great bite into the road in any conditions, but you're shaving a significant amount of weight because you don't have to have that extra sheet of rubber underfoot. I'll also say it does change the underfoot ride and the feel of the shoe. So obviously, anytime you have a big piece of solid rubber like you do on the TC, it's going to feel much more contained. So it's almost acting as kind of a guardrail against this really kind of bouncy, energetic midsole foam. But when you have that Dynaride, it really lets the foam in the plate kind of scream out loud and stand on their own. So it certainly does add to that difference in feeling underfoot, but primarily it's to increase traction and reduce weight.
Yeah. I mean, I ran a lot in the TC. I enjoyed it a lot. I got a lot of miles out of it. And I think people are going to kind of go back and forth on which one is the right shoe for them. And this next question I got is would the RC Elite be appropriate or the TC for someone above the 3-hour marathon? And I guess for racers in general, which shoe are you going to lean to depending on what type of runner you are?
Yeah, it's a weird personal preference one. And the strange analogy I'll use for that is some people like Coke Zero, some people like Coke, and I think they taste similar, but both provide a totally different experience. So Coke Zero, obviously no caffeine, no sugar, but sometimes you still want that like effervescent, fizzy kind of tasty experience. And when you look at something like the RC Elite in comparison, that's kind of like your caffeine boost. So it's not necessarily dependent on pace. It's dependent on what you want to feel that day. That being said, there definitely is something more training specific about the TC, and we did that very intentionally. So we wanted to make sure that the TC brought carbon fiber to a broader range of consumers, and that it wasn't quite as unpredictable as something like an RC Elite. So for someone who might be running in a racing flat for the first time, the TC is a great choice because it's almost like training wheels. It gets you used to the carbon fiber plate, it gets you used to softer midsole foams, but it still feels a slightly bit more constrained underfoot and predictable because of that full outsole coverage with the forefoot. On the RC Elite though, for someone, even if you're running higher than a 3-hour marathon, there's still a massive benefit. I would call out, some people on this stream are probably familiar, there was a really interesting study published by CU last February, where they found that runners averaging 9-minute pace or slower can actually have an even higher % improvement in their marathon time, because that economy just translates to such a higher difference for a slower paced runner than a faster paced runner. So you might find that added benefit of the lighter weight in the RC Elite, that new foam compound in the RC Elite, makes a difference for you, and a huge difference, even if you're more in that kind of 4 to 5 hour marathon range.
Now, can you talk about the foam differences? So FuelCell in general, it's this responsive material, highly efficient. We hear those buzzwords a lot, but FuelCell can be different from model to model. So can you tell us the different experience you're going to get with the RC versus the TC in terms of underfoot feel and performance?
Yeah. So the great thing about FuelCell, every shoe in our FuelCell collection is really hyper targeted at providing our highest energy return, highest rebound underfoot experience. What we've found is that there are a number of different compounds that can help check that off depending on the model. And there are a number of different elements that go into the shoe that aid in that kind of energetic, dynamic feel. In the case of the RC Elite versus a TC, this is a great example where we have two shoes that are both really aimed at providing improved efficiency, higher energy return and rebound, and a really great dynamic bouncy feel underfoot. But with this new compound that we have in the RC Elite, it's also saving a significant amount of weight. So to get super geeky for a minute, this new process and this new foam is really exciting for us because it has a significantly lower specific gravity, which is a measurement of density. So it reduces the weight, but then allows for this incredible energy return and rebound experience. So when you try one on next to the other, it's very clear and it's very distinguishable because there's just a little extra liveliness and a super lightweight feel in this RC Elite foam compound compared to the compound that we have in the TC.
So in general, is one going to be softer than the other?
Yeah, this is where it's really interesting. So if you look at the durometer of both shoes, or kind of the hardness of the shoe, they're actually very similar in terms of the softness. I think where you'll feel the biggest difference is how the outsole comes into play. So we've talked to a lot of people that the denser foam in the TC paired with that additional forefoot rubber does create a slightly firmer perception underfoot, whereas where you have the Dynaride and this less dense foam compound in the RC Elite provides a little bit of a lighter, bouncier feel that can be certainly interpreted as softer by some people.
Yeah. And you say that you hear of some people talking about this. Is this something that you've been working with elite athletes on? And if so, I know Jenny Simpson was a big part of the 5280. Who is really kind of leading the charge on this project?
Yeah, the best part of this project has been working with dozens of athletes from around the globe. I was really lucky. I actually got to spend last summer in the UK for work in a slightly different position, but it was really fun because I got to spend time with, for example, our Team New Balance Manchester group of athletes. And there are some phenomenal athletes over there that have really helped us testing through this process. Also working with athletes like Callum Hawkins, and dozens of other of our longer distance focused athletes. It's been really fun to hear their feedback. They've provided some great commentary on shoes like the TC. But then as we work to validate these newer compounds, there's some great sound bites. Sebastian Kienle provided some really fun early commentary on some of this stuff, and some of his email replies to some of the early prototypes we sent him were so animated and so excited. He used some language that probably wasn't safe for work, but for us, it was just really fun because it showed that they could feel that there was something really dynamic and really different going on underfoot.
Yeah, I think there is something special with the shoe. I've been running in prototypes and I'm very excited to see how this final version performs. Would you say, was there a specific distance in mind you had with this shoe? And then where do you think the shoe is going to lie for runners who maybe race a wide variety of distances? Where do you think it's going to shine?
The shiny spot is definitely the marathon. So everything around this was hyper focused on that 26.2 sweet spot. But again, like we found in conversations through wear test and conversations with a lot of our athletes, there's definitely a range to this type of shoe. So if you enjoy the experience of the FuelCell RC Elite at 26.2 miles, you're also likely going to love the feel and the experience of it at 13.1. We've also talked to a lot of athletes that have worn this for even 5Ks on the road. And compared to something like a 1400 or a 1500, it's still going to obviously have a lot of the same benefits, even over that shorter distance. So we do think, the scope is pretty broad, but really emphasizing that it was built for road races up to 26.2, just shows that it has some awesome range and a great feel for those events.
Awesome. Now, these carbon plated shoes, we're seeing them all over. They've got their highly responsive midsoles. They're built for racing, and this one in specific is kind of that elite inspired version. For someone who maybe hasn't tried one of these shoes before, what will you expect to see for durability? I mean, is the midsole or outsole going to wear out first? What I guess, like, where for someone who's never used a shoe like this before, what can they expect?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I think we're seeing so much newness in the industry all at once with some of these compounds and some of these underfoot setups. I mentioned earlier, but the RC Elite, we wanted to make sure that as people are shelling out $225 for this shoe, that they are getting every cent worth over the life of that shoe. So the other great thing about that midsole compound and some of the new compounds that we've been working with is that it's also been shown to hold some of those physical properties better over time. So in addition to, carbon fiber plates, which don't typically break down and degrade the same way just a foam does, some of these newer foams also just have way more longevity in terms of their rebound properties. So we're seeing better compression sets, and we're just seeing a livelier feel that's maintained throughout the lifespan of the shoe. I will say, that the outsole certainly makes a little bit of a difference. And I think we were really thoughtful with on both of these shoes, how we extended the coverage into the heel area, just knowing that, over time, and especially over a marathon race, the tendency to fatigue and start to heel strike at some point is certainly real. So we were really thoughtful with the amount of rubber coverage in the rear part of the shoe. And then noting on the TC, I mean, we label that as a training and competition shoe. So we feel like that is absolutely made to be used like a typical training shoe and really be maximized, up to that 300, 400-mile range that you would normally see out of a pair of daily trainers.
Yeah, I think that kind of nails it. I've been using the TC for a good range of things, but that extra rubber really does help, get every mile out of it, where the RC Elite, most likely you're going to save it for race day, maybe some key workouts, but
Yep.
It is an elite racer at the end of the day.
Yep.
Moving on, next question. Are there any further plans to build out the FuelCell line besides the Elite, Prism, and TC to really maximize on the benefit of this midsole compound? So what's the future of the line?
Yeah, FuelCell has been really fun. It's obviously only been around for a few years, so it doesn't have the same kind of, reputation and history that our fresh foam collection does. But I think what's been really fun within FuelCell is to see how that we're taking these learnings and these innovations from our most premium and pinnacle racing shoes and key athletes, and then bringing those benefits down to daily training shoes and down to the masses throughout the FuelCell collection. So one example, the FuelCell RC Elite has this fantastic new midsole compound. We do have the FuelCell Rebel V2 launching in the spring, which actually leverages that same midsole compound without a carbon fiber plate. So that's one case where we said there are great benefits to this foam, to this feel, to this compound, and we want to bring that to life for so many more people. So you'll see that in early 21. 21 is obviously a pretty big year for our sport with some events going on, on the other side of the world. And so we're also really excited to see FuelCell extend onto the track. We have two great new carbon plated spikes that we're going to start rolling out here shortly, more broadly, that we'll see athletes racing in next summer. So I think all the way from, daily training shoes to spikes on the track in Tokyo, there's going to be just a ton of buzz around this collection next year. And I'd also, just shout out that carbon plates, they're not just for racing anymore. We're seeing it in training more and more and more. So we also have a shoe in early 21 that's coming out and that will leverage carbon fiber in a true daily training chassis. So pretty excited about that one as well, just to keep in mind that there are still benefits from this material, from that underfoot setup, even when it's not race day, that we're really excited to share with everyone early next year.
That's awesome. I think people are definitely excited to see this move into the training space. And I think another question that we hear a lot, and we haven't seen it yet, Do you think that this fuel cell and carbon plate technology can merge into the stability world? Because we haven't seen that yet from a stability standpoint. There's a lot of overpronators out there
Yeah.
who want to take part.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting topic internally at New Balance, and luckily we have a fantastic innovation team that's already started quite a bit of research on that side. So it's certainly an end goal of ours, and it's definitely something that we've been testing and playing with. I think the actual properties of carbon plates are really interesting, and what you can do within that to help provide stability is super exciting. So we're definitely playing around in that front. And then I would also just say that, the notion of what stability is has also just changed so significantly in our world and in our industry the last few years. We have so many neutral shoes now that are more stable than posted shoes were 10 years ago. So I think as, inherent stability continues to evolve and become broader, as carbon fiber begins to kind of morph and change, you're going to start to see some really unique solutions within the stability space only continue to kind of evolve over the coming years.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see what's coming. You mentioned the Rebel V2, which we're gonna have to wait and see, but I'm very excited about that one, just because the Rebel V1 was such a killer shoe. I think it kind of came out of nowhere. I think people are gonna be even more excited to see that the new fuel cell compound in that shoe. Looking at the New Balance lineup, what is your daily shoe lineup? Are you using the Rebel? What other shoes are you using on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I would say the best part of being on the product team is you're basically always running in something from the future. I'm luckily sample size, so I do a lot of wear testing for us at New Balance as well. And if you look on my Strava, you'll see one of my shoe names is NB something from the future, because I'm usually running in something that I can't name or post or share yet. So one of my favorite shoes is actually a future shoe that I'm testing right now that does have a carbon plate and is very, very fun and very exciting to run in. But other than that, I have been running a ton in the Rebel. It's one of my go-tos and one of my favorites. And then the Rebel V2, I think it's just going to become such a go-to for a lot of people here. But surprisingly, my most recent favorite long run shoe and even a lot of daily mileage is the TC. I think once you get used to that great underfoot feel and running in carbon fiber, it's really hard to go back.
No, I mean, I agree. The carbon plate shoes have just been adding more and more into my lineup. I've been using them a lot. Um, I guess for my fans out there who are a little wider feet, New Balance is known as having those 2Es and the 4Es. We have yet to see that in carbon plated shoes. Is that something that is possible to see in the future from New Balance?
Yes. So it's tough on the racing side, obviously, because those lasts can be a little bit restrictive. We were very thoughtful. We constructed this RC Elite, and one of the big reasons why we took off so much of that junk in the upper was to say, if there's any way we can get a couple extra feet into this shoe, we want to be able to do so. So for some people with a slightly wider foot, you might find that the removal of some overlays and extra details lets you get into an RC Elite where you couldn't get into something before. That training shoe coming out early next year that has a carbon fiber plate, that one will be available in wides. So I will just say, little teaser to be continued, you will have a great carbon fiber plated daily training shoe offering in early 21 from New Balance that does have those wide widths for men and women.
So in the training space, we really haven't seen this. Some people use their carbon plated shoes for workouts, but what are the benefits and maybe disadvantages of a plated shoe? Is that going to be for everyone, or is there going to be a certain runner who is going to choose a plated shoe for daily training?
I think it's going to be for everyone, to be honest. I think once you kind of get used to the benefit, not only in terms of actually during the run, but also, the implications for recovery, for example, and just how your body feels when it's a little bit more efficient and economical to put in miles. It is difficult to go back to a normal shoe. I think our compounds have been evolving so quickly. These underfoot setups have been evolving so quickly too that, that's something and a benefit we absolutely want to be able to share with everyone. So hopefully we'll get to a spot in the not too distant future where carbon fiber is kind of available to everyone and everyone can really enjoy some of the awesome benefits that that can bring for your daily mileage.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited for that. Um, Going back to the RC Elite again, you were playing a huge factor in helping bring this shoe to life. What was the hardest part about creating the shoe, and how do you embrace setbacks when doing a big project like this?
It's it's so tough, because I think you walk a really fine line between balancing personal preference, athlete preference with data. And so sometimes you are playing a little bit of a game and saying that, hey, this material might test great, or this setup might test great, but it might be a little too different or a little too niche. So I think it's finding that fine line of balance between something that feels progressive, that feels fast and feels dynamic, but something that also inspires and instills confidence. So that was one of the trickiest things for us with this shoe, was figuring out, okay, we know what we need to do from a technical perspective to make this a great marathon racing flat, but how do we also make sure that people put this on and they stand at the starting line and they know that they're ready to go and they know that this shoe is here to help them. And so I think for us, it was really kind of managing some of that perception feedback, which was really interesting to figure out how far we could push. And obviously our team New Balance athletes are so great. So I just give them so much props and so much thanks for being kind of a squeaky wheel to us sometimes and saying, hey, we gotta tweak this, we gotta fix this. Because I think now we're rolling out with a shoe that we're all really excited about and we know is just going to perform great for so many people.
Yeah, and you talk about your elite athletes, having very specific needs and wants. I imagine weight was probably a big factor in that. Do we have a final weight for the RC Elite compared to the TC, which it was it was a little heavier, but it was still in that lightweight range. What is going to be the final RC Elite weight?
Yeah, so the FuelCell TC, keeping in mind that was specifically built with a little bit more of a training focus, slotted in around that 9.5 ounce range, which is pretty normal for a training shoe these days. One of the big things we heard from our athletes was that as they kind of transition from training to racing, they need that lighter feel. They need to have the least number of excess grams underfoot as possible. So we ran several exercises while making the RC Elite to figure out how we could shed weight. So we've netted around 7.1 ounces for the men's. So you're nearly 3 ounces lighter than the TC, which is substantial. There's a saying that we have in the office, that's backed by some science, that for every 100 grams you take out of shoe, you can automatically improve your economy by 1%. So we felt really strongly that we need to scale as much as possible out of a shoe like the TC to make sure that we were maximizing that efficiency for race day. And so that was ultimately through a combination of things, right? It's the midsole compound, which being less dense is significantly lighter, the outsole, which is significantly lighter, and then just being really thoughtful with the upper. And again, taking away any of those extraneous details that might have added something visually, but we're adding weight. And so we think we netted in a really great spot to really leverage kind of both durability, but also that lightweight racy feel at 7.1 ounces.
Awesome. I'm excited to get that on my feet. I think lightweight performance, carbon plate, ultra responsive midsoles, it's just like the hot topic right now with elite racers, and we're seeing it more and more. And there is a little bit of controversy in the air just because of what athletes are able to do. Is it performance enhancing? I think this last question from our message board kind of sums things up, and I'd like to hear your response on this. So this is my family does a 5K race every Thanksgiving. If I beat all my aunts and uncles in these, will there be a controversy due to the carbon fiber plate? So Bekah, throw it on us. I know you probably do a Thanksgiving run. Everyone does. What are we going to see with these carbon fiber plates? Is it fair?
All is fair in the world of turkey trots. So my retort would be, you print those World Athletics bylaws, you take them to your family, you all had access to this awesome shoe. So I think it's absolutely fair. And I'm sure you're also going to crush it on your training. But turkey trots, I think, are the best way to settle any family dispute, especially over, a couple hard miles. So by all means, totally fair. Get those kicks on and kick your family's butt.
Awesome. Well, the turkey trot, that's usually my race for the year. So I might bring out the RC Elites. Now moving on back to our live streamers, some final questions. What is the release date, and are there more colorways coming down the road for the RC Elite?
Yes, so our release date is September 15th. So be on the lookout for those. And we are launching with one colorway for men's that you'll kind of see behind me here, and one colorway for women's that's different. It's really beautiful, speedy, aggressive, light lavender kind of color. We will then in February 2021, so only a couple short months from now, be dropping a second set of colors. So you'll get a little bit of freshness for spring marathon season. And then we're also looking to leverage this shoe for future marathon SMUs. So for anyone looking at, London in the future, New York in the future, knowing this year is a little bit interesting for some of those races, but we will look to really celebrate some of those key events that New Balance sponsors with the FuelCell RC Elite.
Perfect. Now, the RC Elite, it's coming in at $225. It's that elite performance race day shoe with the carbon fiber plate, the ultra responsive FuelCell midsole. It's going to be up on our site, runningwarehouse.com, September 1st, and then it'll be shipping out to everyone who wants one not too long after. So extremely excited. They are $225. So definitely it's a little bit of money in the bank, but we're giving away a free pair. We reached out on our message board. If you haven't heard yet, talk.runningwarehouse.com. It's our new message board. You can talk with the community. You can talk with designers, insiders like Bekah. It's a great place to just come talk running shoes and really be a part of the Running Warehouse community. So we had a giveaway this last week for the RC Elite, and Bekah, I believe you have the winner.
I do have the winner. So we had a great question that we discussed a little bit earlier that was about whether or not the platform for the RC Elite is more stable or as stable as the TC. So I know we mentioned that a little bit earlier, that it's a similar platform, but very different midsole compounds. But we thought the question was super thoughtful and loved it. So the winner is, drum roll, 2L Runs. 2L Runs.
Perfect. Well, 2L Runs, we'll reach out to you on the message board. Again, these contests are going to keep coming. Keep checking on the message board. A lot of great stuff to come. Bekah, it has been an honor. Our first live stream, you came out here, you gave the people what they wanted. They wanted to hear all about the RC Elite. And, I think we went through just about every feature in this shoe. People are ready to get this on their feet and ready to race. So thank you again for joining us. We're looking forward to maybe having you on again in the future and talk about New Balance. Is there anything you can leave us off with? What do you say? What do you think is going to be the future of New Balance, and what I guess are you most excited for in the future?
I think just a general kind of running comment that this year, as I mentioned earlier, has been crazy, but running never ends, right? We're so lucky and so fortunate that we participate in a sport that only requires you walking out your door, finding a loop, and staying safe to do so. So as we watch the sport kind of morph and transform and see a lot of races going virtual, we just feel very proud to work for a company that's supporting the efforts of New York Road Runners, of the London Marathon, to bring that experience to life, even if runners can't physically go to a place to participate in a race for now. So that's really excited. And then I'll also just say, we're so looking forward to next year. We think the craziness of 2020 has obviously shocked us all. But we're so looking forward to 2021 and just seeing what our Team New Balance athletes can do, and really watching, a shoe like the FuelCell RC Elite hopefully enable some hopes and dreams on the world stage next summer. So we're very excited and appreciate all the really thoughtful questions and comments here today.
Awesome. I can agree. I'm excited as well. I've seen a little sneak peek into the future, and New Balance really is one of the top brands on my radar right now for companies just innovating and bringing products that competitive runners and really all runners want to run better, run faster, run more efficiently. And I'm excited for what's to come. So thanks again, Bekah, for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Until next time, Running Warehouse out. Perfect.